Good morning. Can members participating online please turn your cameras on to be counted for quorum?
Okay, thank you. We have quorum now. Thank you for everyone for showing up. So good morning. My name is Councilor Chris Moyes. I am the chair of the 2S LGBTQ Advisory Committee. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you to our 7th meeting of the term. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I will call the meeting to order. And again, welcome to those in the room and online. This meeting is...
We haven't started, sorry, we just need to pause before we start the recording.
Stand by as we start some technical issues. All righty. Good morning and welcome to the 2S LGBTQ Advisory Committee on Tuesday, April 29, 2025. This meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting in Committee Room 1 at City Hall and also using the city's WebEx technology with members and staff connecting by video conference or calling in. We ask for your patience with any delays in technical issues. Members of the public are welcome to attend this meeting in person or can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. A few reminders. Members, please keep your video on and your mic muted. If members wish to ask questions of staff or to speak, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate your intention to speak, and I will create a speakers list. When voting on an item or a motion, I would also ask members to raise your hand to indicate your vote. If there is a recorded vote, you will be asked to state if you are in favor or opposed. Members, I want to remind you that although we are participating remotely, we must still submit your motions in writing. The clerk staff are available at 2slgbtq@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although some of us are in different locations and meeting remotely today, The 2S LGBTQ Advisory Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live on this land. We recognize the historical and present-day traumas inflicted upon Indigenous peoples. We stand with communities and families as they mourn the loss of loved ones who were sent to residential schools and never returned. We also acknowledge our complicity in ongoing colonial violence. We commit to supporting the efforts of Indigenous groups towards reconciliation and action-oriented practices, including the equitable use of resources. We strive to learn Indigenous histories and collaborate with communities and families so we can create safe spaces that honor Indigenous cultures and ensure that Indigenous perspectives are present in our work and practice. As a Caribbean Canadian, I'm committed to continue acting in solidarity with our African, Caribbean, and Black communities, seeking freedom and reproductive justice in light of the history and ongoing legacy of slavery that continues to impact our communities across Canada. As part of this commitment, I would also like to acknowledge that not all people came to these lands as migrants and settlers. Specifically, I wish to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. In support of the City of Toronto's ongoing efforts to confront anti-Black racism, I pay tribute to those ancestors of African, Caribbean, and Black origins and descent. Today I must start with some difficult news. Our Vice Chair, Mark Toffoli, has had to resign due to a serious health challenge. Mark has been one of the most dedicated members of this committee. He always showed up, engaging thoughtfully in our discussions and contributing significantly to the work of this committee. His absence will be felt deeply by us all, and we are hopeful for Mark's full recovery. We'll wait the day when we can return to this table where his insights and energy are invaluable. I will now call for declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you would like to declare an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic to let me know and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none are in the room, may I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the 2S LGBTQ Advisory Committee on February 18th, 2025. Cooper, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The first item is QS 7.1, vacancy of the Two-Spirit Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Advisory Committee. This is a letter from the City Clerk for information to inform you that Mark Toffoli has resigned from the Two-Spirit 2S LGBTQ Advisory Committee effective April 10th, 2025. We would like to thank Mark again for his contributions to the committee. Can I have a motion to receive this item? Pink Angel? Okay, all those in favor of receipt? Opposed? Carried. Item QS 7.2, Poverty Reduction Office presentation to the 2S LGBTQ Advisory Committee. Presenting is Tara Galero and Leslie Campbell, Policy Development Officers from the Poverty Reduction Office, are here to give a presentation to the committee. Are they here? Here we go. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leslie Campbell. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a Policy Development Officer with the Poverty Reduction Office.
Good morning. My name is Tara Galoro. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also a Policy Development Officer with the Poverty Reduction Office.
We're here this morning to share a bit of a presentation and update on the poverty reduction strategy and office. In this presentation, we'll begin really broad with an overview of the office's work and current status. And then we will be diving a little bit deeper into one of the pillars of our work, which is specific to food access and food insecurity, and talk about a few of the projects underway that fall within that pillar, and end the conversation with a bit of a discussion of pathways to engagement and a Q&A. So in 2015, City Council approved the Toronto Poverty Reduction Strategy. This is a 20-year strategy to address immediate needs, create pathways to prosperity, and drive systemic change for those living in poverty in Toronto. The strategy's second-term action plan made good progress towards 17 City Council-approved recommendations in 6 thematic areas. These were housing stability, service access and coordination, transportation equity, food access, quality jobs and livable incomes, and systemic change. Coming out of the pandemic and into the third term, or 2023 to 2026, of the poverty reduction strategy, then we've all known that inequality has continued to grow. We now see more than 700,000 residents in the city saying that they are struggling to get by in 2024 compared to 2023. The third term actions are underway to tackle issues of affordability and to support the immediate needs of those living in poverty. And these actions include a commitment to a universal school food program, a commitment to renew Toronto's food charter, commitments to building more affordable housing, expanding eviction prevention, expanding mental health and crisis support, and incorporating poverty reduction into city policies. And every year during the municipal budget process, then city divisions report to our office on investments to advance the poverty reduction strategy. And 2025 was no different. This year's budget contains $36.4 million in new funding, aimed to support, among other things, the development of new affordable housing, increasing equitable access to recreation programs and expanding outdoor pool hours, providing nutritious food to children enrolled in city camps, funding the Downtown East Action Plan, and investing in youth violence prevention by providing supports and opportunities for youth and their families. The work of the Poverty Reduction Office is about incorporating rights-based poverty reduction frameworks in other city policies that we may not be leading directly as well. A great example of this can be found in commitments that the Poverty Reduction Office has made as part of the Access Plan for Two-Spirit, Trans, and Non-Binary Youth, which was launched at this very advisory committee back in October of 2024. Employment and poverty reduction is a key outcome area in the Access Plan for Two-Spirit, Trans, and Non-Binary Youth. Action number 16 of the Action Plan focuses on enhancing gender inclusivity in policies, programs, and services. And the key activity for the Poverty Reduction Office is to identify and leverage opportunities for updates and enhancements to language, monitoring and evaluation, stakeholder engagement, and service delivery in the poverty reduction strategy, which are inclusive of gender diversity, including Two-Spirit, Trans, and Non-Binary youth. A key goal for the Poverty Reduction Office is to use a rights-based approach to address Two-Spirit, Trans, and Non-Binary youth access barriers to city programs and services, providing financial and other social service supports. The Poverty Reduction Office identified key activities as part of this commitment for implementation over the next 3 years. And these activities include more inclusive communications, such as language and content within the Poverty Reduction Office newsletter, stakeholder engagement, for example, through our lived experience advisory group recruitment and committee presentations like this one, and deeper community engagement on priority program and service areas, such as the Fair Pass and other policy initiatives like the Food Charter, which I'll get into in a moment. We know that food insecurity has been identified as a key priority for this committee. And so we'd like to spend some time diving a little bit deeper on this topic together specifically. Food insecurity is the inadequate or insecure access to food due to a lack of money. And the poverty reduction strategy contains 2 key recommendations regarding food access. One is to eliminate hunger, and the other is to increase access to affordable, nutritious, and culturally appropriate food. Access to food is a human right, and yet 1 in 4, or almost 25% of Toronto households experienced food insecurity in 2023. 2S LGBTQIA+ people are disproportionately impacted by poverty, housing insecurity, unemployment, and by extension, food insecurity. We know that the risk of food insecurity is disproportionately higher for certain groups, and however, there is a need for more research to paint a clear picture of the unique experience of food insecurity among 2S LGBTQ+ folks. Research also tells us that food insecurity has a significant impact on people's physical and mental health. One of the recent focus areas for the Poverty Reduction Office food policy team has been work to advance Toronto's food charter. City Council adopted Toronto's food charter in 2001. The food charter, or food charters in general, are community, sort of a summary of a community's collective vision, principles, and commitments related to the food system. And they're meant to guide the development and implementation of policies and programs trying to build a sustainable, equitable, and resilient food system. In 2021, Food Share Toronto launched a campaign to encourage the city to update the charter, and in 2022, the City Council adopted a motion to direct staff to do just that. The Poverty Reduction Office is leading this work with a strong emphasis on consultation and collaboration with community, and we are using a rights-based approach to co-develop and update the charter. In partnership with Food Share Toronto, we successfully facilitated a series of discussions with community agencies in the fall of 2024. Resident engagement across the city and an online survey are forthcoming as part of this ongoing process, and we are prioritizing equity-deserving communities in that conversation, and specifically those most impacted by food insecurity, including the 2S LGBTQ+ community. While we gained a lot of momentum in the process to update Toronto's food charter last year, in January of 2025, then we were directed to pause our efforts in order to focus on another important food access initiative, school food programs. However, we are committed to resuming food charter engagement when possible. Student nutrition programs were the reason that the work of the food charter were paused, and they are programs that are community-based meal and snack programs in school settings run by students, parents, and volunteers. Student nutrition programs in Toronto are currently in 75% of schools to varying degrees, and the Poverty Reduction Office is supporting the council-directed work to develop a universal school food program, including universal access to a mid-morning meal by September of 2026 and lunch by 2030. The vision and implementation plan for the program is going to be going to council in the coming months. Currently, school food programs in Toronto provide healthy breakfast, morning meals, and lunch, as well as snack options to around 243,000 students each day. These programs give students access to nutritious, culturally appropriate, and safe food in a non-stigmatizing manner. Next steps for this work include engaging with the public. And in discussion questions at the end of my presentation, then we'll have some questions for the committee on how best we might be able to capture the voices of 2S LGBTQ+ students, families, and communities in this engagement. The impact on health and student success of healthy school meals are difficult to understate. In terms of classroom success, evidence has shown increased attendance and focus, improved test scores in math, science, and reading, and that participants are more likely to graduate from high school. In terms of long-term health benefits for participants, we see students gaining greater knowledge and healthier eating habits throughout their lives, as well as a reduced risk of chronic diseases and improved mental health. So this is work that we're very excited to be involved in and look forward to moving forward with time. To summarize, we are involved in a number of different areas of work and are very interested in connecting with and incorporating the views, needs, and insights of Toronto's 2S LGBTQ+ community and the work that we support. We've done this most recently in our work on the food charter by explicitly naming the 2S LGBTQ+ community as one we intend to prioritize hearing from as part of our update consultations for the food charter, which are currently on pause. And also through a desire to connect with the 2S LGBTQ+ community as part of external engagement on the Universal School Food Program. We also, as an office, currently sit at the working group table for the access plan for Two-Spirit, trans, and non-binary youth, and are accountable to the Poverty Reduction Office commitments embedded in that plan. Finally, then, we will be engaging with relevant interest holders as part of pre-budget conversations that take place separate from the city's official budget consultation process to engage with communities, including the 2S LGBTQ+ community later on in this year or early next year. So I'll pause there and I'd like to sort of open the floor in case folks have questions about areas of my presentation that I might be able to dive deeper. I would invite those questions and would also like to pose 3 questions of our own for the committee for further discussion. And those questions that we'd love to hear back from you all on are, first, how can we better connect with and hear about the unique needs of 2S LGBTQ+ students and their parents to advance a pathway to a universal school food program for Toronto? Second, how can we better connect and engage with the 2S LGBTQ+ community in advancing Toronto's food charter? And third, how might we effectively capture the voices of the 2S LGBTQ+ community as part of our planned 2026 pre-budget consultation? So thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Leslie and Tara. Happy to take any questions for the panelists? I could start. Just to warm things up here. So I of course, support the school meal program. I think it's a great thing. I passed a motion at Board of Health on this, and again, I supported the motion at Council on this. What I'm not clear on is that I know that the program is being proposed that it is not implemented, but administered through social development. Is that correct? or ECDC?
I think part of the discussion is going to be around government and where the program is housed and administered from. I'm not certain that that's something that has been decided as of yet. Tara, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, that's correct. The report going to executive committee in a couple of months will provide more information about the governance and location within the city of that. Currently, the program is administered through Toronto Public Health, and the city manager's office is leading the development of the vision and strategy to expand the program with support from social development.
So sorry, so it's housed in public health. I'm probably getting into the weeds here a little bit. Probably shouldn't. But I don't know how much you know about the program, but Toronto Foundation for Student Success, you know the organization. When I was a school board trustee, the funding from the city and the school boards all flowed through TFSS, right? There are reps on the board from the school boards, from the city. They have a foundation, they have a relationship with the Toronto Food Terminal and others. So my question is it the intention to work with them or have a parallel type of program that's almost competing with them?
Thank you. Yes, there's currently a partnership model to oversee student nutrition programs in Toronto, including Toronto Foundation for Student Success, the Angel Foundation, the school boards, and the City of Toronto, and that model will continue.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Pink Angel, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. A number of questions I have for the panel. And by the way, thank you very much for this incredible work. And as you have stated, the impacts are incalculable. And so my question is, can you briefly speak to the Angel no connection, but I heard there was this Tamara speaking about this Angel program. Can you elaborate on that? And secondly, the question about students is, what is the definition of a student? Because excuse me, I have many newcomers who are students who go to language school, apprenticeship programs like Build Up and so on. And for all intents and purposes, they're adults and they have incredible food needs and they cannot get to a food bank because they're in school. And by the time they finish school, the food bank is long closed. So they call me and ask me, where can I get food? I said, well, come visit me and I'll give you some food. I give them either cash or PC gift cards, e-cards or actual physical cards. So I see a lot of needs outside of the quote unquote student, what we might say student, public school and high school. So these are adult students still in need of food because they're far more than food insecure. They have no food. So I'd like to know how I could possibly serve this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, Pink Angel, thank you for your question. Just to clarify the first component of your question, are you referring to the Angel Foundation for Learning?
That's right. And I think what Pink Angel might be aware
Correct.
of, that's the Catholic Board and their program.
Correct, thank you. The Angel Foundation is the school board foundation for the Catholic District School Board in Toronto. And their association with student nutrition programs, they sit on Student Nutrition Ontario Toronto, which is the partnership with the city and other partners to help administer student nutrition programs. And they specifically support the Catholic District School Board.
And through the chair, Pink Angel, in response to your second inquiry about, and I think this is a really important point you raise around the definition of students and the fact that you're in contact with people who may technically fall into certain definitions of students, but who are currently facing barriers to food access. The student nutrition program for the City of Toronto operates within elementary and high schools for the Toronto District School Board, the Toronto Catholic District School Board, as well as certain of the French public and French Catholic elementary and high schools in the city. That is how the program has run historically. But we absolutely recognize that there are many other folks who are in other training programs, who are in schools, and who may not be able to, say, make it to a food access point like a food bank during open hours because of other commitments during those times. That's a serious challenge that we absolutely recognize. And I think that these are the sorts of issues that we're really interested in connecting and engaging with community to better understand so that we can try to think about how to sort of address this through either policy change or certain program support shifts to support programs for food access outside of regular hours, recognizing that lots of folks are doing lots of things that may make access to food banks and or other food supports during regular hours difficult. And so on that piece, I would ask perhaps that you continue to stay in touch with our office, especially around some of the upcoming engagement opportunities, because these sorts of barriers and challenges are exactly the sorts of ones that we want to be able to take into consideration when doing things like updating the food charter or having meetings with interest holders prior to the 2026 budget conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. How could I stay in touch, please?
Oh, the Poverty Reduction Office has a mailing list. You can sign up via the Poverty Reduction Office City of Toronto website, just right at the bottom. You can enter your email to get added to the mailing list. And I would invite any and all members of the committee to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thanks. Up next is Cooper. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. A recommendation. You asked for recommendations around the Toronto Food Charter and community engagement. There's this lovely organization they're located at 260 Queen Street East. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Building Roots, but they're doing some incredible work around poverty and food insecurity. They operate this weekly drop-in where they provide nutritional needs to the community. And if you're familiar with the community, you understand that this is a community that is facing extreme poverty. Again, so they provide these meals. I think just taking a community approach, having them involved in consultations. They're seeing the clients. They see a lot of Black, queer, to LGBTQI plus folks, the audience that you're targeting. So I think, again, intentionally involving them in the conversations so that their voices are, reflected in these guidelines. And as well as providing some sort of honorarium or compensation for their support. So I just wanted to, highlight the work that they're doing. I think it's incredible. So I think that's an opportunity, a pathway there for you to, co-design this strategy. So I'll be more than happy to provide you with Amy's contact. She's the Director of Community Engagement at Building Roots. So I just wanted to share that with you this morning.
Through the chair, thank you very much. And can you repeat the name of the organization one more time? You said Building Roots?
Building Roots.
Building Roots.
They have
Perfect.
a website, so you can find them online as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Ranjit, you also had your hands up. Go ahead.
And thank you so much for this report and the great work you're doing. With specific reference to your questions, have some comments and suggestions. One is that there is a national 2S LGBTQ plus poverty based poverty related research going on, and the research lead is Dr. Nick Mule at York University, and they have one of their reports coming up and community engagement coming up in May, maybe at the 519. Yes, so that is one suggestion. I also wonder whether you have you are in connection with the two-spirited peoples of the First Nations. That is another agency I think you can connect with, specifically to address the issues related to two-spirit people. I'm also reading the Social Planning Toronto's report last year, 2024, and that summarizes the rather tragic situation when it comes to poverty in Toronto. Toronto has been named or nicknamed as the poverty capital of Canada, and with specific reference to Indigenous peoples, Indigenous children's poverty. It says that Toronto has had a poverty rate of 20.4% when it comes to Indigenous children, compared to 14.5% of non-Indigenous children. So this gap is likely even larger as the census undercounts Indigenous peoples and hard to reach populations. So this is where we need to really focus on number one, Indigenous peoples, and within the purview of this committee, two-spirit peoples poverty, because one is, unlike most of us settlers, Indigenous peoples are facing colonialism head on. Colonialism has never ended for Indigenous peoples. When it comes to two-spirit peoples, they are facing a kind of a double jeopardy, because they are, number one, a lot of them are displaced from their communities. Indigenous two-spirit peoples, as I have learned, are warriors. They have social responsibilities, and given to them by the communities, given to them by their creator. This is what I have learned. So this displacement and colonialism have impacted them so much. This is where it is very important maybe for you to reach out to the Two-Spirited Center of the First Nations, right in the middle of Toronto, and maybe have consultations with them and take their expertise on this. I have a question. One is, can you explain the rights-based approach a little bit more? Because if it is rights-based approach, which seems to be directly in contradiction with the capitalist approach, which is maximizing profit. So how do you mediate these two? Rights-based approach when it comes to the capital over labor approach. That is the situation we live in. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Just to clarify your question, Ranjit, you are would like a little bit more detail on a rights-based approach relative to or relative to capitalism. I just want to make sure that I understand so that I can answer directly.
Okay, yeah. So now, as far as I know, Toronto, Canada is an advanced capitalist country where you prioritize businesses and business approaches overrides. So there is this kind of mediation, and that is where policies come in. So what are the negotiations or mediations you have taken to make sure that rights-based approach is not compromised based on the business models that Toronto and Canada's policies are promoting? I'm not criticizing or anything, but I want to know how you balance these things. So prioritize the rights-based approach.
Through the chair, thank you very much for that important question. What I would say to that is that rights-based approaches, so for example, in the context of the Poverty Reduction Office, I'm a policy development officer working on the food team. So in Canada, then Canada has ratified the right to food. And it is kind of committed to the progressive realization of that right over time. We certainly recognize in many parts of the work that we do, we are bumping into the tension between rights-based approaches and a capitalist system in which we operate. And I think a big part of the work of the Poverty Reduction Strategy and Office is about holding some of those tensions and supporting the conversations that support progressive realization of those rights over time in ways that balance people's right to food and right to be able to access healthy, nutritious, appropriate food that meets their needs with the need for the city to operate and for kind of communities to be able to be supported and to thrive, whether you are a business person or a person working in the nonprofit sector. Everyone needs to be able to kind of access what they need. And so part of our work, and it's not easy work, is to hold space for those conversations and to ensure that the kind of focus on rights and progressive realization of those rights is not lost as part of those conversations as well.
Through the chair, if I can just add to that, the Poverty Reduction Office is also planning to work on a rights-based framework. This is work that is yet to come out. The intention is to embed rights-based approaches into programs and policies through the Poverty Reduction Office in an equity approach. And while we're confronting systemic issues like racism and discrimination and colonialism that you have mentioned, Ranjith. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? Maisha, go ahead. Did I see your hand up?
Thank you. I think in terms of figuring out how to hear better, like about the unique needs of students and parents, some of the things that come up for me are talking to GSAs, like holding evaluation and feedback sessions at schools in different accessible formats. Talking to grassroots groups and nonprofits who have youth as like one of their bigger commitments, and then doing a mix of street outreach and online outreach. In terms of GSAs, I think, yeah, really stationing yourself in different schools, especially in areas where there might not be as much feedback. Like I'm thinking of downtown East, Scarborough, like there are lots of wards that don't, I think, get as much attention as other areas do. So working with schools in those areas and their GSAs and clubs and councils, like offering some kind of incentive for people to come participate in feedback sessions. And I'm always thinking about like accessibility and like who falls through the cracks, because I think a lot of information doesn't actually reach a lot of people, and a lot of folks don't actually know about these initiatives and all, like at all, and what they actually mean. So having like, yeah, in-person engagement, online surveys, in-person surveys, perhaps even trying different like arts-based evaluations or methods of gathering feedback and information from parents and students. Working with different like nonprofits and grassroots, there are a lot of groups that students actually are more likely to like attend and they're already going to get support. Like LGBT Youth Line, SOY, the 519, even smaller groups like Queer South Asians, QMN, marginalized majority. Like there's also groups in the city that I know students are already going to. So I think it's a good place to kind of share this information with them and gain feedback. I'm a big fan of having youth directly involved in work that's about them. So I think if you're able to find capacity to have youth directly engaged in the process of reaching out to other youth in whatever capacity, like as coordinators, facilitators of these initiatives, like that might also be a great idea as well. And then having a good, clear feedback loop as you go through the process, because I think that also kind of falls between the cracks. Like people don't actually get updates about what is going on with a lot of these projects and initiatives that directly impact them.
Thank you very much for those excellent suggestions.
Thank you. Talene, I think you had your hands up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank the presenters for like this excellent topic and to have this conversation with us. And I want to echo like what Maisha was saying. That was my what I was going to say, but I also wanted to add the GCNC, the Georgia Trevallo Neighborhood Center, as another resource that supports a lot of US LGBTQ youth, particularly in high school. So that's everything I wanted to share.
Thank you very much. And I think Pink Angel had her hand up again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I missed asking another question from the panel. Can you please elaborate on Fair Pass and how some of these trans newcomers can access that, because that takes away their funding towards food. So if they can access Fair Pass, presumably it's TTC Fair Pass, that might help a little bit towards their food insecurity. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to comment? No? Okay.
Through the chair, Pink Angel, thank you very much for that insightful question. You're absolutely right that using funds for transportation does take away people's resources around having enough money to both get around and have the food that they need. The Fair Pass program is designed as a transit discount program to provide a discounted fare for folks who qualify for the program, as a means of enabling them to save a little bit on their transportation. And so your question was around how can folks access the Fair Pass program? In terms of access, then I would direct folks to the City Fair Pass website, and which I believe has instructions on how to access it. I would also be happy to follow up with you offline after double checking with my colleague in terms of specific instructions around how to access. But I want to make sure that that is the specific question that you were asking.
Yes, that is correct. I'd like to know how to access this Fair Pass program and connect these individuals with the Fair Pass so that they have extra, so that they can save those funds for accessing food, because they're simply unable to get to food access points during school hours. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah, I believe the sign-up instructions for Fair Pass are available through the Fair Pass website, but I would need to clarify that and get back to you.
And also too, when I was a commissioner in the TTC last year, we also extended the program, expanded the program, allowing more people to actually have access to it. So.
And I've just received confirmation through the chair that yes, it is through the Fair Pass website. That's where you would find that information.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks very much. Thank you for the insightful question.
And also to Councilor Ainsley was just I think just stepped offline, is also a commissioner on the TTC. Seeing no other speakers on the item, sorry, Ranjit, you have more questions for staff? Go ahead.
Okay. I have worked with LGBTQ plus refugees and newcomers most of my Canadian life. Now, one thing they have really benefited from is the COHAB program, Canada Ontario Housing Benefit Program. It seems like it is closed. Current COHAB allocation for the year 5 has been fully allocated, and the program is temporarily closed to new applications. I'm reading the City of Toronto website's information. So that is something really that has provided a lifeline for, especially for LGBTQ plus refugees and newcomers when they were looking out for housing. So I wonder whether that could be expanded in the future, in the near future. That is one question. And in terms of your question number 3, how can we effectively capture the voices of the 2S LGBTQ plus community as part of the Plan 2026 pre-budget consultations? So this is where really you can reach out to the 2S LGBTQ plus communities, different communities. It is not a monolithic community. Two-spirit peoples, trans people, and LGBTQ plus refugees and newcomers. There are agencies that provide this specific support, and if you start now, you could really work out a good plan to have these effective consultations. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion. And yeah, I agree that starting the reach out early and recognizing the ways in which the 2S LGBTQ plus community is not a monolith, and so requires kind of reaching out to specific organizations within the community would be required as part of that. And your point about the Canada Ontario Housing Benefit Program is also well taken, and I agree and think that that is also the sort of conversation and feedback that I think would be really helpful to receive as part of that pre-budget consultation, for example. So thank you for bringing that up, Ranjit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now that we've gone through all the questions, any speakers on this item? I'll just say that I think this is a great initiative, especially when it comes to the school meal program. I mean, there's so many hungry kids in our city, you know, in a first-class world city, you know, and we still have poverty right across. My caution to the team, though, is that I would rather not see another layer of bureaucratic administration on the program. There are many experts out there who's been doing the work for decades. Toronto Foundation for Student Success is one of them. The Catholic system has one. That's another conversation we'll have another day, and others. But I would like the city to continue to work with our partners rather than actually trying to bring it in-house or portion of it in-house. So that would be my takeaway, and I hope it's put somewhere in your report when it finally comes to committee or exec at some point. And I will also state it at that table and at council as well. On that note, any other speakers on the item? Seeing none, I'm going to ask Ranjit to move this item for receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And thank you to the presenters. The next item is item QS 7.3, Toronto Island Park Master Plan. Annalie Zonena Strategic Planning, Implementation, and Community Engagement Parks and Recreation is here to give a presentation on the Toronto Island Park Master Plan. It's actually very exciting. I have been part of the discussion on this for at least, I think, 2 years now. And so I'm happy to see it's finally coming to this committee for some feedback.
Thank you, Chair. We'll just set up our presentation.
I think they mentioned they were going to control it from their room. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, thank you. I think we're ready. Hello, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Annalise Zonina, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Natami Stewart.
Hello, I'm Natami Stewart. I'm the Senior Project Manager for the Toronto Island Master Plan Implementation at Parks and Rec, and I use she, her, they pronouns.
I'm very pleased to be bringing the Toronto Island Master Plan to the 2S LGBTQ Advisory Committee today. Through the 2024 approval of the Toronto Island Master Plan, Council directed Parks and Recreation to present to this committee, and we are very happy to do so. This is an introduction to the Toronto Island Master Plan for some, and for those of you who have been involved or are aware of the plan, you will see an update on implementation, specifically in relation to work to celebrate the 2S LGBTQ+ significance on the island and at Hanlan's Point. And before continuing, I'd like to acknowledge the ongoing support from Deputy Mayor Ausma Malik and her office for the work that is advancing. Toronto Island is a place like no other. It is inherently tied to the city and also a refuge from urban life. It has been a place for healing and ceremony for Indigenous people since before record. It plays an integral role as well as part of significant regional ecological systems. Toronto Island currently faces pressures of increased demand, aging infrastructure, flooding, and more. The Toronto Island Park Master Plan will address these issues and ensure that the park is thriving as a signature place for people to come and enjoy parks for generations to come. In 1956, Toronto Island was established as a park, and it includes 242 hectares of land, which is about almost 600 acres. The park sees 1.5 million visitors every year, is home to over 700 residents. It's the location of 6 environmentally sensitive areas and 1 provincially significant wetland, the location of Centerville, the Toronto Island Marina and 3 yacht clubs, the TDSB Island Natural Science School, the Gibraltar Centre for the Arts, and it is the location of Canada's first Pride celebration, which happened in 1972. The slide you see on the screen now shares the Toronto Island Council directions specifically related to the plan that's in front of us today. I'd also like to acknowledge that the Parks and Recreation Division, in consultation and collaboration with other city divisions and agencies, is also working to deliver on directions related to ferry fleet replacement and improvements to the Jack Layton Ferry Terminal. The Toronto Island Master Plan is a plan that was developed over several years for a well-loved place in Toronto. In Anishinaabe-Moan, the lands have been referred to as Minising, which means on the islands, since before colonial record. City Council adopted a plan that recommends improvements to Toronto Island Park that are carefully considered to balance multiple overlapping objectives for the park and its use. These include, in summary, a light touch approach that prioritizes the ecological integrity of the island, an approach to play and explore for the visitor experience that continues from the mainland to the island and back. There's also a strong focus on equity throughout the document that honors and celebrates the deep Indigenous significance of the islands, their rich 2S LGBTQ plus history, and the contemporary diversity of the island's stories and visitors. Staff are currently working right now on a number of fronts to advance the recommendations of the Toronto Island Master Plan, and these include capital projects, changes to parks operation and programming, continued engagement as priorities are set and budgets are approved, and of course, daily improvements to the visitor experience for those coming in the summer. The Toronto Island Master Plan is organized around 6 goals, each with corresponding strategies and actions. The goals are shown on the slide in the flower motif, and they include revealing an Indigenous place, supporting the natural environment, enhancing visitor experience, improving access and connection, celebrating 2S LGBTQ plus significance, and elevating equity and belonging. These actions are organized in the plan into immediate, short, or long-term projects, and how we are advancing these projects is defined by opportunity, urgency, complexity, capital cost, and feedback from engaged stakeholders and the public. In total, the plan includes over 100 recommendations to be implemented over 25 years, which illustrates the complexity of the island and the diversity of interests and experiences it serves. So throughout the master plan, over 24,000 people were engaged in a comprehensive engagement approach that lasted over 4 years, and this included island and waterfront residents, businesses, interest groups, and the public at large. I'd also like to add that Indigenous communities have been participants in all phases of the project, including a ceremonial launch on Minising. The engagement around Toronto Island is intended to be transparent and ongoing. Right now, on the city's Toronto Island Master Plan Community Engagement website, we've posted the summary reports from all 3 phases of engagement, and specifically the Hanlan's Point engagement. They're available for you to see. They include summaries and data on the feedback, as well as direct quotes and feedback that we received through the survey and other work. So this slide you see here contains some highlights of that feedback. But we will keep that conversation going, and that's intended to be throughout the entire implementation of the master plan. Importantly, this includes the establishments of a working group structure, which will provide regular and standing format for engagement on Toronto Island Master Plan, including issues related to new capital projects, interpretive strategies, visitor experience and investments, and operations and management of Toronto Island Park. Consultation with the public at large will also happen, as well as focused engagement with equity-seeking groups, which will continue as projects are brought forward in sequence with the overall implementation of Toronto Island Master Plan. A little bit about the Hanlan's Point Beach Working Group now. The establishment of the working group is part of council direction, and it was initiated in 2023 through discussions on the TIMP, Toronto Island Master Plan. We are excited to formally relaunch this working group later this spring. The group includes community representatives and community members who were selected through a civic lottery process, which took place in December of 2023. To support an impartial and facilitated approach to ongoing discussions about Hanlan's Point Beach and through the Hanlan's Point Beach Working Group, Parks and Recreation has retained third-party public, who is a public engagement firm, to lead these processes for the immediate and short term, as the culture and membership are established and ways for the working groups and Indigenous Advisory Circle to engage with the Toronto Island Master Plan implementation are put into practice. So what's happening on the island right now? This is a slide that shows the highlights of some short-term projects, which include flood mitigation design, the launch of the island working groups, and development of an island charter. Strong focus on implementation work at Hanlan's Point in this past year and currently, reflecting the priorities of the Toronto Island Master Plan and various members' motions directions related to Hanlan's Point in particular. Interim improvements to the visitor experience, which will inform long-term investments, launching of the landing design for the 3 ferry locations on Toronto Island at Hanlan's Centre and Wards Island, improvements to accessibility for the beaches on Toronto Island, on-island transportation, including the introduction of bike share this year, and improvements to wayfinding. As I mentioned before, 100 priorities and actions lead to a long-term outlook for different projects. So you'll see here on this slide highlights of mid and long-term projects, which include ongoing work with Indigenous communities to advance ceremonial gathering spaces within the park, ongoing management of the Toronto Island's important natural areas, investment and study into the feasibility for a welcome center at Toronto Island, ongoing improvements to the trail infrastructure, recreational opportunities through the lagoon system for water-based activities, Center Island Landing marketplace to support 4-season use and excitement about taking the ferry across to the island in the winter, and a park management plan to manage uses in the active areas and natural areas in a holistic way. The approach to Hanlan's is very unique and very specific to Toronto Island Master Plan, and this slide includes an excerpt from the Master Plan specifically related to the significance of Hanlan's. It's on the right, and you can find that on page 118 of the Toronto Island Master Plan document. I want to acknowledge that developing this content of the plan was a result of many discussions with the queer community and representation from the queer community at large. This section of the plan highlights that the approach to Hanlan's must include management practices, investment, and engagement. And in particular, beachgoers' safety and protecting this space as historically queer is essential. It must be an intentional part of the Toronto Island Master Plan implementation now and as the island continues to receive visitors in years to come. These next 2 slides set out the list of projects that are currently underway at Hanlan's to support the goals of celebrating 2S LGBTQ+ significance on the island. The table on the slide shows on the left-hand side the named projects or initiatives that are part of the Toronto Island Master Plan, and a very short description right now of the work is underway or complete in order to fulfill those objectives. So first, establishing the Hanlan's Point Working Group, which will be launching, as I mentioned, this spring. Restoring and protecting Hanlan's Point beach ecology. We are currently installing new fencing to support the environmentally sensitive areas and dunes, launching invasive species management this season, renaturalizing at least 19,000 square meters of parkland in 2025, which is almost 2 hectares. We are also launching with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority the Beach Renourishment Study, which is an important first step in expanding the sandy area of Hanlan's Point Beach in areas where it has eroded. We are enhancing community safety through the installation of new beach signs to signify that it is a historic queer space and where people are entering a clothing optional area. And we are investing in trail realignments, which is now complete, to protect privacy for beachgoers from view from the main street. We are revealing the cultural heritage significance of Hanlan's Points by the installation of the new heritage plaque to indicate that it's the location of Canada's first Pride, and installing new signage at the Rainbow Road, which was painted last year. A new flagpole with a Pride Progress flag will be installed at a second location on the beach this season. For amenities at Hanlan's, where the plan tells us to enhance Hanlan's Point Beach amenities, we have expanded the clothing optional area to the entire length of the beach at Hanlan's Point. We have invested in new paved pathways that make accessible access to the beach possible. There are new water bottle filling stations being installed this season, new bicycle racks, and this year we'll be opening existing showers that are located in Hanlan's Point Beach for public use. As we look to the years ahead, again, the projects and initiatives are listed on this slide, and you'll see that next steps include regularly convening the Hanlan's Point Beach Working Group, continuing work on invasive species management and re-nourishment of the beach, developing a community safety plan with the Hanlan's Point Beach Working Group, involving Hanlan's Point generally as part of the island-wide approach to cultural heritage interpretation, and in designing and investing in new beach showers, landscape design around the Mermaid Cafe, and cultural heritage interpretation. So finally, I'd just like to say that Toronto Island Master Plan came to fruition through extensive engagement, and as we continue to transition to implementation, I'm sharing this division, Parks and Recreation's commitment to providing opportunities for involvement going forward. And finally, I'd like to say I look forward to seeing you at Toronto Island this summer, and open to any questions.
Thank you very much for that very robust presentation. Just wait until I see the members on my screen. If you want to unplug. Okay, we're good, we're good. Jad, go ahead.
Thank you, that was amazing and super comprehensive. And thank you as well for centering certain things such as the care and welfare of the Indigenous populations that exist within Toronto Islands, and also the environmental aspect. Now, two things I want to bring up. First of all, is when it comes to the Hanlan's working group. So I would advise that whenever we create these kind of projects, that we bring in the organizations that we often traditionally bring in, such as, for example, Pride Toronto, because they do great work for the community. But I also would advise that when we're dealing with this kind of conversations, that we bring in organizations that work on the ground, you know, not organizations that work for small phases or that create certain things, but organizations that are constantly involved with the community so that you can actually get their feedback, such as Friends of Ruby, such as marginalized majorities, such as Indigenous Youth Roots. So just expand the couple of organizations that are within the beach working group. That's my first point. My second point is the issue of safety. And trigger warning, in 2021, there was an attack. There was an attack on an LGBTQ individual that's part of the community. And there was something else that happened a couple of years later. So my thought when it comes to community safety is queer people sometimes become very vulnerable when they're in situations where there are no protective eyes, where there's nothing to protect them. And this is what happened specifically for those individuals in the past couple of years, when they would be walking down the trail or they'd be further away from predominantly queer spaces, and they would be harmed and they would be violated. So I'm trying to think of this outside the conversation of policing, and I'm trying to think of this as something that looks like maybe I wrote down a neighborhood watch, some form of a community collective that's soft and gentle, that has experience in conflict resolution, but also has a sense of authority and power that would be around the island and the spaces where queer people are, and that would have some form of jurisdiction to protect queer folks or reach out to others when queer folks need protection. And finally, one last point is harm reduction should be considered specifically on the islands for LGBTQ plus people. This is for many folks, a sacred space, but for many others as well, a space where people celebrate and party. And we know that it's important that we set out some harm reduction stops and spaces over there so that if anything happened, the community can be protected. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll receive that unless there's a specific question, but we appreciate that feedback and we'll take that back.
Okay. I also want to point out too that Friends of Hanlan's has been front and center from the very beginning of this project. So they have their fingerprints all over this.
Yes, you've been very involved with the Friends of Hanlan's, absolutely.
Yes, which is really important. Any other questions of staff? Pink Angel, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Thank you, panel, for your incredible work at in this particular area at Minising. And what I'd like to put forward is the centering of the name and what can be done to promote the indigenous original name of this, of this area. Just like, here in the city, we call it Takaranto, from which we get to this day Toronto, but the original name is Takaranto. And that is not promoted enough in my view, just like Minising is not promoted. And in my view, it should be on the maps, online. It should be referred to as Minising by all organizations, including the media and mainstream media, so that people know, the citizens of this area and of this nation should know that the indigenous names have meaning. Excuse me. So this has to be front and center and prominent in all our communications regarding Minising. So I think to start, yes, you'd have a plaque. That's great. But this needs to be spelled out widely, not only in Takaranto, but also whenever it is being referred to, it should be referred to in its original name. So that's my suggestion for the public engagement firm. But also, I'd like to echo Dr. Jabber's concern regarding safety, particularly for the rainbow community, and in particular for trans persons, particularly of the intersections of color, being immigrants, language barriers that we have. So I'd like to know what is the possibility for better protection in the clothing optional Hanlon's Point area, Hanlon's Beach, and what suggestions might the members have about security regarding this. And thank you, Dr. Jabber, for bringing those security points up. I really appreciate that. So I'd like to hear more about how security is either enforced or how we go about our own security of person. So I think that's a huge concern, particularly for the rainbow community, and as I said, in particular for trans persons. So maybe we can engage in that a bit more. But also a question for the panel. When you build fences around these environmentally sensitive areas, in dunes, for example, like how does that affect the wildlife, the natural life that is like not sand per se? Yeah, I don't know how a fence might be better protect the environmentally sensitive areas, and if there's any building going to be put up near or surrounding it. So those are the two questions regarding the environmentally sensitive areas. I hope I've made myself clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Pink Angel. We will respond to both the community safety piece and then the environmental piece. So just to start with community safety, one of the primary tasks of the Hanlan's Point Beach Working Group is to work towards a community-based community safety plan that is not emphasis on police enforcement, that does develop changes to behavior at the beach that are supported through physical changes, new indications that people are entering a queer-friendly space that has been quietened from other activities, so really focusing and emphasizing that this is a place that you come to intentionally if you are a member of the community or an ally to the community. We've also are completing works with Ports Toronto and Toronto Police Services to install a motorized watercraft exclusion zone off the shore of Hanlan's Point to limit motorized boats from coming and getting too close to the shore. So these are pieces in place that are a combination of physical changes, practice changes, and hopefully signs and visual changes to indicate that this is a special place that is historically queer and has certain expectations of how you embrace and behave in the space. I'll pass it over to my colleague here to discuss the issue around the dunes and environmentally sensitive areas.
Thanks for the question. Through you, Chair, the fences that we're building are the kind of fences that generally will keep people from going through environmentally sensitive areas and will sort of direct, they're more of a gentle direction than they are a prevention. So if you really wanted to go over the fence, you could. And if you were an animal, you could go over or under, mostly under. They are suggestions about where you might want to travel. So they direct the great number of people towards places where that amount of foot traffic is less likely to do damage to the dunes and reduce the amount of heavy foot traffic in the environmentally sensitive areas without being enclosures that absolutely prevent either people or animals or plants from enjoying the natural areas. So it's really more about crowd suggestions and as Annalie referred to, about changes in practice and changes in where people expect the beach to start and what people are expecting to see when they're there. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, we're at time. Any other questions? I also want to know, Cooper, I also want to note as well, though, that the Hanlan's Point Beach has eroded significantly over the last 10 years as a result of the Tommy Thompson Park. And so it continues to erode to a point where it's not even really a beach anymore. So a lot of this work is actually addresses that and tries to rehabilitate the beach itself. So again, a lot of work has gone into this, and I do want to give a lot of credit to the Friends of Hanlan's for their input on this report. Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. Hi again, everyone. I love this, so thank you so much for this presentation. It's exciting. Just learning about the work that you're doing, you and your team, exciting work. I just wanted to talk some more, at least get some clarity around, or at least center the experiences of Black queer Torontarians in this conversation, specifically around programming, around, Hanlan's Point, what does that look like? So there are two things that I want to bring down, I think, a question and also a recommendation, just really centering those experiences and also reflecting, again, Black queer Torontarians' histories as we revitalize our strategies and efforts. So I'm just curious. My first question is, how is the city embedding an intersectional anti-Black racism lens in its environmental safety and public engagement strategy for the island? And call to action actually is for more culturally specific programming what I mean by this, can we see more Black Queer Beach Days, community markets, art installations that are co-designed with Black queer creators, and also Black Queer Wellness Days? So I just wanted to bring that forward and to, get some clarity around some of the work that you're doing to engage Black queer Torontoians in that conversation.
Thanks for that. I'll say that the city does not actively program Hanlan's Point Beach. We offer lifeguarding services during the swim season, but we know that there are many community organizations that use Hanlan's Point Beach as a location for parties and celebrations, celebrating queer experience. So that kind of organic evolution of how the space is used is something that is absolutely in line with the Toronto Island Master Plan. One thing I would just add is that's such an important lens for as we discuss and start work on the cultural narrative trail. That's a trail that will span the entire length of Toronto Island and speak to the culturally diverse experiences of people who use Toronto Island now and into the future. So that kind of lens is what we would hope to see come out in the outreach that we do through the engagement on the cultural narrative trail, which will have points along Hanlan's and the Beach Road, as well as we expect some presence at the ferry landing, which indicate to visitors the importance of the space when they arrive at Hanlan's. Can't say exactly what it will look like yet, but your comment is well taken in terms of how we proceed with an intersectional approach to engagement on it. So thank you.
I also want to add, I don't know, today I seem to be chiming in a lot here, but the first Caribbean Festival actually happened on the island. And so just last week, the mayor and I made an announcement at the 519 talking about providing more funding to festivals. And Pride Toronto and the Caribbean Festival, were there as well. And for the first time, I believe, the two organizations, we actually work together to enhance those things. Okay. Any other questions? Ranjit, go ahead.
Yes, I want to highlight actually something Pink Angel also suggested, centering Indigenous peoples, Indigenous history and Indigenous presence in the Toronto Islands. If you look at the Treaty 13, and Toronto Island was not ceded until recent times, more recent times, until like 2010, as far as I can remember. So Indigenous presence, history and ongoing presence is so important because traditionally, for time immemorial, Toronto Islands have been a sacred spiritual grounds for Indigenous peoples. Their ceremonies were held, their burials were there. So when we use or transform Toronto Islands into the current uses, that is so important. I just wonder, this is along the line of renaming. What underlies renaming? Like, for example, Hanlan's Point. What was the Indigenous name before it's being renamed as Hanlan's Point? So this is how I just want to bring this also, how insidious settler colonialism is. While I want to make this cautionary remark, like while for rainbow communities, it may be a pleasure point, area where you have clothing optional beaches and so on. However, it also needs to be constantly in respect of the presence of Indigenous peoples and the history of Indigenous peoples. So when we rename, it's important to also highlight certain areas, their Indigenous presence and histories. So I just wonder whether we could find those roots as well together, so that becomes much more inclusive space and respectful space for the Indigenous peoples. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We take that comment, and it's absolutely will be woven throughout our work. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, Any speakers on the item? Seeing none, I'll ask Talene to move this item, if you don't mind. For receipt, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next item is item, and thank you for the presenters. QS 7.4, supporting the capacity of QTBIPOC nonprofit founders. I know that we spoke to the mover here, Jad, to defer this to the next meeting because her staff, our ECDC staff, can be here to respond to any questions that we may have. So, Jad, I'm going to have you move that for deferral to the next meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the last item on my list, or on the agenda, I'm going to say, is QS 7.5, Enhanced Workplace Protection for 2S LGBTQIA City Services Employees Living with HIV. And this was moved by Cooper. To be fair, I think this motion is out of order. Our city staff are unionized staff, and that's part of the collective agreements. We just ratified QB Local 79 and 416 just recently. TTC just ratified their the agreement. Toronto Police is in the process of doing theirs right now. What I would suggest perhaps is receiving this item rather than actually making recommendations on this item. Does that make sense to you? You're looking to be kind of, you could speak to it if you like. Provide some feedback. Because I can say to you that as a city employee, all of these services are actually are being provided through our healthcare benefits as a city. Do you want to speak to this at all? Why did you want to? You could speak to it, so go ahead. What are your thoughts on this? Speak into the mic.
Well, my thoughts have shifted because this is not the conversation I was looking for today because we moved forward. I thought I was really looking forward to a presentation, I guess, and to, I guess, share my thoughts, my recommendations, and to—
A presentation from staff?
No, well, because I've been working with the team to move this forward as a conversation. I think I was looking forward to a conversation, I guess, a representative from the city, from the department, to speak some more about what the system looked like, you know, for, I guess, workplace accommodation for this specific community. So I think I was looking forward to that and also sharing my insights, what I've been hearing, strategies, how we could move forward. But my thoughts have shifted. My understanding is that we're not having that discussion. That's not what we're doing right now.
No, again, because of collective agreements, I mean, we cannot make any changes or bring recommendations to this table around this particular issue. I mean, maybe the framing would be like asking staff what is available, what we're doing to support our employees, perhaps. But we cannot actually make any recommendations because of the collective agreements that are in place.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Okay. You want to move it for receipt? That way, if it's for receipt, because I don't want to make it bring it out of order because then it dies. But if it's for receipt, at least various city departments may see this and may use it at some point to help shape their collective agreements in the future.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if there's somebody I could talk to, because I would like to have that conversation, if there's any pathways for that, I would also.
So maybe at a future date, we can maybe bring our HR folks here to talk about how we support our city staff.
So to the member, we can connect with you after this meeting to help arrange that.
Okay. So Cooper, I'll have you move for receipt. All those in favor? Okay. There's a motion coming apparently. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Cooper. And that's the end of our agenda for today, folks. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. Everyone's awesome. When I say you guys, it's not meant in a negative way. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.